Yo, what's going on, guys? Tony here with another video about the Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro. Today we're going to go ahead and take a dive into the web GUI that the UniFi operating system provides for the users. In addition to just checking out the system settings that we can change on there, we're going to take a dive into the UniFi Network Application, which is basically that centralized controller that's going to allow you guys to control your UniFi access points, your other switches. Basically, it will be the network controller, because in the last video, if you remember, we basically just got our Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro from Santa Claus himself, which was super fun, and we unboxed it, basically ran through the first time setup using your smartphone. But today I want to take a dive into the web GUI. We'll take a look at the settings that you can change within the UniFi web GUI, as well as dive deeper into the network application itself. So this video is going to be for either brand new users who, like me, recently got their UDM Pro. We'll take a look at the different kind of settings, all the different configurations that you can do inside of the network application without drilling, too far deep into any specific thing. There will be more videos to come on, VPN configurations, backups, and restoring, stuff like that. But, if you're a brand new user, you can go ahead and open up your web GUI, tag along with this video. We'll go through some options. I'll show you some stuff about the application, and in addition to the brand new user, this video will serve really well for somebody who's looking to purchase a UDM Pro, who hasn't already done so yet, but just wants to see, what does the UI look like. I'll go ahead and give you guys a pretty granular view of what we've got going on here. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and open up a web GUI and we'll load it on up. So straight off the bat, there's a couple things we'll look at here. As you notice, you can see my IP address of the UDM Pro up here. We'll go ahead and access the web portal two different ways. The first way that you're seeing here is just from the LAN. So this is not the remote access SSO that you can use, which we initially used to set the device up. This is on the local network, and there is a couple different things that you'll notice here straight off the landing page, where, let me log in here. So where you'll notice the main difference here is in the big portal here. When you notice that I'm on my local machine here, you can see there's only Heimer's Brain. That's obviously my UDM Pro that I named after Heimerdinger from League of Legends, if you're familiar. But you can see, there's only one app, or there's only one device here. When you log in through the unifi.ui.com portal and you have your remote access enabled, you're going to be brought to this portal here where you can actually click on Heimer's Brain. And again, I only have one Ubiquiti console right now. But if you had more, if you had access points or, switches, you would see those devices here. And, there's a couple different views you can do. You can click on this little list view that kind of gives you a better picture of what it would look like. You'd have other devices listed here. You can see your device's WAN IP address, what kind of model you're running, obviously the device name. What's cool, you can even see your status here, right? You can see I have an update available. I'm running version 1.10.4. I think 1.11 is out. In the next couple of videos, we will be doing an upgrade video, so check that out later on. But what else is important here is you can see the applications that my device is running here. You can see I'm only running the network application. Now, these Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pros are capable of running all of Ubiquiti's applications. So we're talking about the UniFi Network, which is a centralized controller. You've got your Ubiquiti Talk, which is VoIP. Ubiquiti Access, which is door access, those little panels, and the last one that you can load onto here is the Ubiquiti Protect, which is effectively the little NVR system that comes preloaded with the UDM Pro. So before we drill into the device and get into the network application, there's a couple things that I think you should know about from the manage your UI account. And first thing, if you look at this profile, there's really nothing here they need to look at. It's just basic stuff. You want to go ahead and go down to the security dropdown, and this is really important here. You've got your two-factor authentication, and this is disabled by default, obviously. But especially if you're going to be using this remotely, through unifiui.com using the internet, you're absolutely going to want to enable 2FA. Super simple. Download the Google Authenticator off your app store and generate some codes, set it up that way, and you're good to go. Another important feature on here is your session timeout. By default, this is set to 30 days. I haven't changed this, but if you're really conscious about that, maybe you set it to 7 days or 1 day, and after that time period lapses, it will automatically sign you out of your SSO session. Moving forward in the account section here, you've got payment methods, subscriptions, and early access programs. Really nothing to talk about there, but what is important is this backup section. As you can see here, I have a couple different backup files. The December 20th was from the original day where I set this up. It automatically set up backups for me, which is pretty good, I would say. But then I was doing some testing here the day after Christmas as well. So you can see these backups are stored in the cloud. As far as I know right now, that's the only way to back up your UDM Pro is right here through the cloud. If you guys know any differently, let me know. Super interested. I do have a NAS here at home that I would like to store my backups locally, but as of right now, this is the only way I know how to do it. We will go into that in another video, but important to know, this is where all of your cloud backups are going to be stored. You can delete them here, but that is all that you can do from this prompt. So at this point, we'll go ahead and close the screen here. And as a matter of fact, we'll also get out of the UniFiUI.com. This is the remote access tool. We'll go ahead and log in locally. So what can you see here on this screen? Right, you've got your managed users, you've got your network application, and if you were running, this may look a little bit different than what you're seeing if you're doing this with me, because you can see I only have this network application here. So if you guys are running the talk application or access or protect, you will see little boxes here for those, and by default, I believe they are enabled. I went ahead, and I'll show you how to do this even in this video. I disabled them. I don't have any Ubiquiti cameras at this time, right? So the UniFi Protect is useless to me. I never even planned to use the talk, potentially access, when I get a home in the future, that would be cool. But, I obviously don't have access control panels that I'm using. So, I went ahead and turned those features off just because security best practice. How do you patch a vulnerability? What's the best way to patch a vulnerability if it comes out? Disable the service, right? You can't attack a vulnerable application if it is not even enabled on the device. So I'm not using these applications. We'll turn them off. I'll show you how to do that in a minute, but let's get into the managed users here because there's something super important you need to see here. So first and foremost, you can see there's only one account created here by default, and it is me. Fun fact, my name is not actually Keyboard Warrior Tony, it is actually Anthony. So there we go. You can see I am the owner and my status is active here. Now, what is really important about this page here, you can see under the account type that I have a Ubiquiti account and local access is enabled. So by default, you actually can't even access your device here through the web GUI like this by typing in your local UDM IP address. It's only going to be through unifi.ui.com. Now, I believe in the next version of this operating system, so that's the 11 or the 1.11 that I mentioned earlier, they may have disabled that. I think that you can access this locally by default. So, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But when I did this, obviously that option was not available. So what you can do here is click the edit button. Overview, nothing to see here. We'll go over profile. And right here where it says local username, you can go ahead and add it. So just show you how quick it is. I'll remove it, add local creds. Put in the creds here. And there you go. You save it, you're good to go. So, that's really all you need to see here. There is the groups. Now, maybe you'd have a better view of this if you had other devices, but I believe they're doing this just by device. And if you have your user applied to a group, I would assume that allows you to get into that group. If you're not applied to that group, you probably don't have access. So let's go back to our portal here on the LAN setting. We'll go into system settings here because this is where you're going to access. Look at that. So this is the encryption key that's generated by the SSO. Look at that, and we're getting prompted for two-factor authentication, so that's awesome. All right, so now we're finally in. What you can see here is a general page. There's a couple of important things that you would really see all over the place anyway, right? MAC address, which obviously I'm going to redact here. WAN IP. Got my gateway IP here on the default network. You can see your UniFi OS version. Like I said, I'm running deprecated 1.10.4. We'll be upgrading shortly. And then you can see some quick performance stats down here below, right? This is really nice here, and we'll go ahead and scroll down here in a second. So you can see what else this page offers, which is just some more stats about hardware. You can see how much internal storage is available, as well as if you had one of the SSDs installed. As I said in the first video, don't exactly have a use for that yet, but we'll see if we can do anything with it. Moving on over to the tabs here in the upper left-hand corner, we've got our updates section. We'll go ahead and click on that. And this is where you can see what I was talking about earlier, where when you load into the default portal, you would normally see all of these applications listed: Network, Protect, Access, Talk. You can see that they are actually stopped here for me. You can simply start them by clicking Start Talk. Give this a second. So there we go. After a couple seconds go by, you can see that this application is now running, and it does want me to update the application. Obviously, it's probably deprecated. I haven't updated this. I've had it turned off for a few days now. So to stop the service, if you're not using it, simply click on the little hamburger icon and hit stop. Take a couple seconds, and then we'll stop again for you. So more importantly, what you can see up here is your status. You can see there is an update to 1.11.0 available. If you were going to be updating your UniFi OS, it would be right here. Simply click the button and go ahead and confirm. We're not going to go through with that now. We'll make another video on that later. But you can also see down here, we've got our status up to date on the network application. We're running 6.5.55. It's the official release channel. And again, if there was an update here, there would simply just be a little update button. You could update the network application right there. Just below that, you can see the options for the auto update. I do have that feature turned off because if you do this, read the fine print here, allow UniFi Dream Machine Pro to update automatically. Your console will restart as part of this process. Now again, for home users, this is set to restart probably at like 3 AM or something like that. It's really not going to be an issue for me. But I do have some automated jobs running throughout the night. I don't want this feature to be enabled. I personally will just frequently visit the forum pages, check out the updates as they come in, and update accordingly, plan those schedules out. So moving on, there's this location and time section. I'm not going to get into there. There's not really too much to see. But that is useful, again, if you're operating a network with multiple sites, multiple facilities. You can put all that information in there and see, this building has these devices, they're on this floor. Pretty powerful tool. It's just not something that really suits me as a home user. So we'll click on the advanced feature here, and now you do have a secure shell, obviously with the UDM Pro. This is disabled by default. You'll have to go ahead and enable it, and as well as set a new SSH password. This is and should be different from both your local credentials and your UniFi UI.com credentials, because you are going to be logging in as the root user here, the super admin user. You definitely want this to be secure, and you definitely want it to be different than your other credentials. Now here's the big one, right? A lot of people see this. It's the remote access. This is how you access the device by default and through UniFiUI.com using the internet as a transport. But that's very that's very controversial, right? A lot of people don't want their device to be open to the internet, right? It leaves you to different types of vulnerabilities where maybe Ubiquiti gets hacked, which has happened, right? I'm showing a page of that right now. Or actually, when I first got this device, I was trying to access it. This is prior to me even setting up the local credentials or SSH, so the only way that I physically could access the device was through unifi.ui.com, but Amazon AWS, they had a huge cloud outage. A lot of the Ubiquiti servers are hosted in those clouds, and when they went down, the whole service went down, for like over a day. So there was a point in time where for over 24 hours, I believe, I was not even able to access my machine. Now, for me, at that moment, that wasn't a huge issue. I had my daisy chain set up where I just had, my UDM Pro hooked up to my router, then hooked up to my modem, so I wasn't even using it as my primary network transport yet. But again, if I'm a sysadmin, I'm using Ubiquiti gear, I'm an MSP, I'm using Ubiquiti gear in my customers' networks, and I need to get in there and do something through that tool, and it's down. That's no bueno, right? So, this remote access, this is where you turn it on, this is where you turn it off. I mentioned earlier about the cloud backups, super unfortunate, but in order to even back up your device, you need this enabled. Take it or leave it, it is what it is, but that's where you're going to find that configuration. Right below that, obviously, we've got our enable analytics improvements, we have that turned off, and then there's a few console controls you can do here, right? You can restart the console, power off the machine, factory reset, we don't want to touch that. Now there is a download support file. This is really helpful for if you're working with Ubiquiti support. Maybe you discovered a bug in the system. This would be similar to like if you're working with Cisco TAC on an issue. I know I had some issues with iOS 17.3.4a on ISR 4331 routers. I've been working with TAC a lot about it, and they need show tech files, which basically shows your running configuration, everything that you have configured, what version you're running, all of those goodies, as well as log files too. So you can download that right here, super good. And here is a restore console button. Now, if you do not have your backup configuration set up, and you can see this is beta, store backup files containing UI, application configurations, general UniFi OS settings, and user roles. Currently, this feature is only supported by the network application, so this, you can't back up, talk, or protect. But you're going to be backing up here to the cloud, right? And if you don't have this stuff enabled, this option is not even going to be here. It's going to be grayed out. So you can go ahead, come down here, configure your backups. Again, this specifically, we are going to be going into another video, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but you can simply click backup, and you can even download those files to store locally. So that's about all that we have here as far as the system settings go inside this web GUI. We're going to go ahead and drill now further into the network application, which I feel like a lot of you guys are really here to see. But I just felt it was important to go over some of the account management configurations as well as what you can do here locally on the device. So we'll go ahead and click back to our portal here, and we will drill further now deep into Heimer's brain. We're going to get into the network application. So straight away, here we are. Dashboard looks very colorful. You've got some traffic overviews going on. You can see different kind of clients, how many are connected right away. And one thing that I think is really cool about this dashboard is pretty much everything on this screen is interactive, right? You can kind of hover over here. You can see, we watch a lot of Netflix here on my house. There's also, HTTPS as well, traffic. That's majority of all networks. You're going to have a lot of HTTPS. You can see my clients. And, again, if you actually click view all traffic here, it's going to take you somewhere else in the application, which I thought was cool, right? You can kind of point yourself around. But again, me clicking this right here or this right here, it's going to literally just bring me right here, right? So here we go. We'll get over there in a minute. We'll go back to the dashboard, left side. You can actually click your UDM Pro. And again, it does feel kind of redundant because, I click the button here, a little sidebar pops up, and this is literally, you configuring the device. There's a bunch of settings and configurations you can see here on the overview. So MAC address, all the stuff you've been seeing, firmware version, here's your WAN IP, uptime, all this good information, right? And again, you can click on your clients here. Look at what you're seeing here. You got Neo's terminal. You can see all that information right here. Right? You got your Apple iPhone. Here it is. Here's some of that information right here. So it does seem kind of redundant, but it's nice that it's really easily accessible. Click on the network. This is actually pretty important here because you can see the different type of networks that you have configured here by isolation, servers, users, core. Pretty good stuff there. Insights, you're going to see CPU and memory utilization. Probably could have done a little bit more with this page, but good information nonetheless. And when you get over into the settings, this is where things get really granular. So you see up here, you kind of have a port view, and you can see, my ports here have different names. I've got Neo's terminal, that's for my machine right here. I've got Zaro's Vault, and this is port 3. That's what I used to uplink to my NAS, my true NAS server, and Meridia's Beacon, right? That's my wireless access point. It's an Asus RTAX 3000. You can actually name these ports by clicking on them. So here we go, I gave it this name. And then you can put the port profile as well. And again, these are the networks, right? So basically what this means is Meridia's Beacon is using my user's network, which is, if you go back to the networks here, this IP address schema, right? It's using this network. So really cool that you can do all this stuff from here. Again, you can shut down ports. This port 7 is unused. I can go in here and just disable it. Apply changes, come back. It's actually disabled. Really cool. And there are some other configurations you can do. You can click on the screen here, literally just a screen brightness, rack multi-screen synchronization. I'd really like to see somebody use this. I bet you it's probably pretty cool if you have some UDM switches racked up next to each other. Probably looks pretty neat. Obviously doesn't do me too much good here unless, I'm, remote. I need somebody to go service my machine. I can do some fancy stuff with the lights. But again, you kind of have some redundant information in here as far as the networks go. Services, come on in here, MSS clamping. This is more advanced type stuff. ARP cache timeout. You're probably just going to want this stuff to be default. Maybe you want to increase your ARP cache timeout. If you'd like to, you can do that here. Click custom. Now moving down, we've got manage, and this is the same type of stuff that you were seeing in the system settings profile where we were last, where you can restart the device, you can locate the device. So that locate device feature is pretty neat. Again, if you're doing some remote support, you can also download the device info right here, as I said before. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is super redundant, and you'll find multiple ways to accomplish the task that you're trying to do. So again, there's some useful stats over here on the left. You can read the release notes, which is definitely handy, right? This is going to spit you out on the community.ui.com. You can see, here's the 6.55 network application release notes. Go ahead and read through those. So now we'll go ahead and take a dip into the topology here. This is going to look a lot better, again, especially if you have Ubiquiti APs. I am using a third-party access point, so you're not actually seeing that here. Effectively, everything connected to my laptop here is going to be actually almost all this stuff, right? I mean, this is the only device that's not, as well as Zaro's Vault. So all this stuff looks like it's just simply connected to port 5, which again, for my application is okay. But, if you do have the other Ubiquiti gear, it is going to play much nicer here. There is a floor plan feature that is coming soon, not available yet. But let's go ahead and get down into the UniFi devices, where again you'll see a little bit more of this redundant information. I wouldn't necessarily call it redundant in this sense, because here you're just looking at the physical topology, where here you're going to go ahead and drill into your UniFi devices. If you do have more than one Ubiquiti device, this is where you would manage them. You're going to see your Ubiquiti APs here, you're going to see your switches. So again, if we click on this, you're effectively going to get the same exact prompt as when you were in the dashboard, where you can come in here, configure your ports, blah, blah, blah. Again, this is going to be much more useful if you have multiple devices that you can control through this application. Now, also tied to the topology is the client devices section here. You can see this looks a lot better now that I have a whole bunch of devices on the network. I have been using this as my main daily driver. You can see tons of information as far as device name, vendor, is the client wired or wireless. Again, unfortunately, everything's going to show up here as wired for me. Because my RADIUS beacon is, a third-party solution. And, one thing that you'll see here that's weird, right? Look at my RADIUS beacon. It's actually grayed out. It's showing offline right now. But I can assure you, my RADIUS beacon is online. So there's, a little bit of, I guess, tweaking or some defect you're going to have to live with here. I'm sure they'll do better at the device detection here in the future. But you can see there is an issue there with that. But what is really cool from here is you can actually click on these devices here, and I have the Sony PlayStation 4 here. You get some information. Here's the MAC address, really good. How long has this device been online for? 7 hours 30 minutes. What networks this guy using, right? Who's it hooked up to? This is really useful if you have multiple devices here, and it gives you the port as well. So again, that's port 5. That's on RADIUS beacon. That's wireless. Click on over into the insights here, you basically get to see just a whole bunch of network traffic, which is really good, right? You can see we use our PlayStation for Hulu. Again, there's some HTTPS going on, maybe some updates or something that come down from the PlayStation. The net flow, and this doesn't get super granular, but it's enough to show you a couple things, which is neat. Clicking over into settings, you can name it, and again, this does not change the actual device name. This just changes what you're seeing here. You can see I did that with Zara's Vault, Neo's Terminal. But again, you can set bandwidth profile. So if you want to limit this device to a certain amount of bandwidth, which is really cool, you can actually do your manual DHCP reservations right here. And you click this on, boom, you can see this is the device that it pulled automatically. It's just going to hold that unless I come in here and change it. We won't do that now, but that's how you do that. You just change the IP, hit apply. You might need to reboot the appliance, or if you're on Windows, do an IP config release for new. But super simple. So the client settings page here is definitely really helpful. One of the better things about the UniFi network application, but it's not without its issues, as you can see here with RADIUS beacon. So moving on over to the traffic stats page here on the left hand side, you're going to be greeted with yet another dashboard here. You're going to see a ton of information, especially if you've been using this for a few days, just about the different type of traffic that's going on your network, right? You can see almost 50% of my traffic is literally like Netflix or Hulu. Like I said, we do a ton of that here in my house. You can see we're using SSL over TLS, IMAP4, HTTPS, obviously, all sorts of things, right? You can see web services, Akamai obviously is going to show up, Amazon's going to show up. But like I said, you don't get, super granular as far as like DHCP codes are concerned. But there is some good information you can drill on in here, see who is the person generating this traffic, what's coming out of here, and you can create firewall rules or otherwise just react to the data once you see it here on this page. So pretty cool. Definitely take some time, check out what's going on in your network in here. But again, it is not fully perfect. You're not seeing absolutely everything that you probably want to see out of NetFlow. But again, for this being an all-in-one appliance, this is really sweet that this is here. So we're going down into WiFi Insights. Unfortunately, no Wi-Fi networks found, right? I'm not using a Ubiquiti AP in this topology here. This is going to be empty here. So hopefully in the future, I will get some Ubiquiti APs, hook them all up, get a mesh going, and we will see some analytics here. Moving on over to the traffic inspector, this is a little bit different than the traffic stats. And honestly, I think this is, super ugly the way that this is kind of matrixed out, right? You have 0 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and 60 minutes. So the way you can read this is, if I'm looking at 1 p.m. here, we're at 1 p.m. at 0 minutes. This is literally 1 p.m. You come on up here to this intersection here. If there's a dot here, it's 1:15 p.m. right? Here's 1:30 p.m. So this is probably what, 1:20. Oh, look at that, 1:20, 1:25 p.m. So you can kind of see just generally when was a lot of traffic happening. The bigger the blobs, like over here, the more traffic that's happening. This is probably the biggest blob here. But it's pretty cool. It's think it's ugly. I'm not sure that I'll be using this here too much. So in addition to what you see here, you do have your threat severity toggle. You can put this on or off, also set transfer size limitations. When you have this enabled, you can click on the threat map here and it's going to load up the threat severity. You can see I don't have anything propagated here. I didn't turn this feature on yet. We'll check this out in another video in depth, but you would propagate some information based on threats that are coming from probably these regions right here, but I didn't say that, right? So moving on over, we'll click on our notifications. This is really good. You can see all sorts of information here. Again, not perfect, especially when we talk about the clients here. This is not true, right? This disconnected 4 times in a row without ever reconnecting. That's obviously not correct, but still helpful. There's going to be some stuff propagating here. You can see Zara's vault went down at a time, which again, 5:23 a.m. I don't think that's actually even correct, but it is here. There's some cool stuff going on in the notifications, and you can configure what you want to show here by coming up to the top left, clicking display options, and filtering out what you want to see here. I do have all enabled. I do want to see them all. You can flip through them as needed. So what is super good about this is getting into the settings section here. This is where you're going to do a lot of configurations outside of what you would have done on the device level, right? When you come in here, click on your device, and you start changing stuff in here on the ports and stuff. Getting into the settings is where you're actually gonna be able to configure, here's your Wi-Fi networks. If you're running UniFi Ubiquiti APs, you're not gonna configure, autonomous access points. You're gonna come in here, you're gonna create the Wi-Fi network, you can create a guest hotspot, and this network application will push those SSIDs and controls and VLANs and networks to the access point for you. Obviously, unfortunately, can't demonstrate that for you guys here, but here's where you would do the Wi-Fi situations. Now, what I can show you, what is really cool, is the networks tab. So this is where you actually add a new network, right? You can see I have a couple different networks here. The coolest network of all, right? I got my remote access VPN here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll be configuring one of those for you guys as well, so you can access your network out of band. But here to add a new network, you would just simply click add new network, set your name. If you want to do the VPN, here it is. We'll check that out later. But then you come into advanced, and there's one thing that I want to show you because I was racking my brain about this. I could not figure out how to manually set the IP range. And if you go back here, you can see by default, the UDM Pro is using a Class C RFC 1918 address. So, 192.168.0.0/16. I don't want that. That's what I'm running today. I want to move away from that. I want to go to Class A network. It's just, what I'm familiar with at work. It's just something that I want to build my network on. Not, again, that I'm ever going to use that scalability here at home. It's just, kind of something I wanted to do. So here, in order to achieve that, you can come in here, you can select your VLAN ID, but where you set the IP scope is right here, man. And again, can you see it? Take a second. It's that auto scale network button here. There's nothing really that you can set your IP address, and I was racking my brain trying to figure this out. Uncheck this. You definitely want to be a DHCP server, but this is where, you would set, hey, I want to be 10.0.5.1/24, and here is your DHCP scope. So that's really cool. This is how you actually get that set up and create your networks this way. That's about all we'll get into in this section here, because again, this is kind of one of those more advanced, not necessarily advanced, but one of those features that I want to dive into on a video dedicated on its own. This one's getting kind of long already. Moving down, you got your WAN section here. Now, I do want to drill into this for a second because there is one thing that's important. By default, I did change the DNS servers. You're going to get the Ubiquiti DNS servers if you want them. There's probably no issue there. I prefer to use Cloudflare. I think it's faster. I think it's more secure. So I chose to use Cloudflare servers. Now, in addition to that, you come on down here to your ISP capabilities, and just like when you set up your UDM Pro in the first place, this is where you would, say you have a bandwidth upgrade, right? Now I've got 10 gig fiber at home. You would come in here and set that setting in this page. So getting more to the nitty gritty here, we'll go over into the traffic and security section. We will take probably a few videos to go over this section in total, but this is where you're going to set your firewall rules. This is where you're going to set up your internal honeypot. And this is where you're going to look at the IPS, IDS stuff, right? Global threat management. You can set up geo blocking right here, country restrictions. Here's your firewall rules, right? There's some enabled by default. I believe that this would have been created when I enabled the VPN. And then there's some other advanced features that you can see down here. Now here is your traffic device identification. It is enabled by default. This is where you're seeing those analytics over in the traffic insights section. But moving on, let's talk about some notifications. Again, this is one of those features that is going to have a whole video dedicated to it. because I think that getting SNMP or otherwise notifications is really important. You can see you can do push notifications to the app, or you can send them to your email. You can see I have some configured here, but I don't actually have that set up yet. Again, we'll go over that later on. But here is where you can enable a whole plethora of different notifications. Super cool. So here we go. We're getting advanced now because we are clearly going to the advanced features section. There's some Wi-Fi analytics here. This is not something we'll be able to get into right now with you guys, but you can see switch ports, right? You can see by default, when you create a network, it's going to create a switch port profile, and you can come in here. And the ones that you create by default, you can't actually change too much about them. You can see here, I can't even change the name. But if you come in here, you can create a new one. ISO 2, you can say, hey, it's PoE, it's passive, it's pass-through, whatever you want to do here. And then you can set VLAN tagging configurations, right? So you can see here's my native network, it's going to be on core. And I also want to tag users here, so users can talk here as well. Here's your voice VLAN, servers 20, there you go. And there's some other things you can do with RADIUS 802.1x. You can set your speeds, port isolation, right? Storm control. Here's your Spanish tree protocol. You definitely want to have that enabled, especially if you're running a multi-switch topology. And this is really neat as well. You can set this up to send you a notification whenever the topology is changed by plugging in the device. So we will get out of here. We'll check out network isolation. That has a video of its own, right? You can set your bandwidth profiles. I'm just using default here. Again, this is home. I'm not doing a whole bunch of QoS or bandwidth profiling here, but that's where you would do so if you'd like to. And here is your radius. Now, again, the server, the UDM Pro here, can act as its own radius server, and I believe it does a fine job at doing so, especially for the purposes of just getting that remote access VPN working, because it is a requirement. And it will be configured for you by default. Now, if you do have an external AAA server that you want to use, you can go ahead and click Add Radius Profile, fill out all of the configurations as per your AAA server, and get things set up that way. So moving on down to these advanced gateway settings, there's some important stuff in here. If you're doing any port forwarding, maybe you've got some game servers set up, whatever you need to do, you can do that right in here. You need to configure some static routes. Here it is. Dynamic DNS, we don't have that enabled. I don't need that. Here's your DHCP options, multicast DNS, obviously don't have that either. Same with UPnP, potentially open yourself up some vulnerabilities. This is disabled by default. I was pretty happy to see that. And then more importantly, right, you've got SNMP if you wanted to, and then ideally v3 is what you'd be using. So you can configure your credentials right here, and if you have a network performance monitoring server set up, you can go ahead and hook up your UDM Pro to respond to that as well. So let's go ahead and drill on down into the system settings. There is a few things you can check out in here. Country or territory, obviously I'm in the US, I'm speaking English, and I like my time format to be 12 hours. This new user interface, this is where you would toggle between the newer and the older UniFi OS profiles. And I know there are some guys on YouTube. I saw, Mac Telecom Networks. I specifically was watching a video of his, and he says, whenever he spins up a new UDM Pro or Ubiquiti device, he automatically switches back to this. I checked out a little bit. Obviously, I'm a newer user, so I'm, I guess, accustomed more to the newer interface. So if you want to go back, you come under the settings, user interface, new user interface. For the purpose of this video, we'll display and talk about the newer interface. I'll come down here, apply changes, and be brought back. So there are a couple of those settings, right? Dark theme, obviously. If you're not in a dark theme, you're doing it wrong. Save your eyes. WiFiman is a Ubiquiti product which does some of those Wi-Fi AI analytics. Again, it is enabled. I'm going to disable it just right now. Again, what's the easiest way to mitigate a vulnerability? Turn off services you're not using. I don't have Ubiquiti AP set up yet. WiFiman is useless for me. Go ahead and click on the maintenance here. So here's where you would update your UniFi console. This is going to point you back. This is going to point you back originally to the first prompt that we were in, where we were looking at the system settings, and here's your device firmware upgrades. You can say, hey, are there any updates? It's going to check, and then it will propagate that information in the system settings. So again, more with that, a little bit of redundant details here. You've got your automatic device updates set up here. Obviously, I have that disabled. You can do UniFi device updates, put the schedule on there, and then what's important is here's your restore from backup. What I think is weird about this, you click this restore from backup, and I've tried this. You saw in the beginning where you could download your file. You can't actually restore from that. So what is this for? We're going to find out, because it seems like you can't, download these backup files from the cloud and then use this method to manually restore. There's another way of doing that, just pulling it straight from the cloud. So I don't know what to tell you, but I am not exactly sure why this is even here. But moving down, there's a couple other things. You get Unified Device Update Cache. Moving into the advanced settings, you get your private release channels. Most of the stuff is not too exciting. What's cool here is your statistics data retention. You can set how long you keep in different logs for. I did change these from default, but you can choose what you want to do there. Then there is more and more support information. Right here's your logs. Download your system config. Download the support information like we talked about with the TAC case. But all in all, I mean, this network application is super cool. It it gives users a web GUI to interact with instead of using the command line, which obviously you can enable SSH and get into the command line here and operate the UniFi OS that way. You can do everything you can do from the GUI, from the command line. I'm sure we're going to take a look at that as well in the future video. But that's about all we had here. I hope that this helps anybody out there who's either looking to get into the UDM Pro, you wanted to see, what's this network application all about? How can I use it to manage other devices? Or, somebody who, like me, recently got the system here and you just wanted somebody to, walk through some of these configurations with. I hope I was able to provide some value here for you. I do apologize. Obviously, I sound kind of sick right now, not feeling 100%, but, wanted to bring this video for you guys anyway. Anyway, I will post more videos here to come about the UDM Pro. Hope you guys look forward to seeing those, and I'll see you next time.